a navy polo, a business-class seat, and a pilot's sneer at his out-of-place look. Troy Williams savored the calm of Flight 447's amber-lit cabin, a reward for decades of leadership. But when Captain Derek Stone challenged his right to be there, he made a catastrophic mistake. One call turned the captain's prejudice into his career's end. Not just a slight avenged, but a legacy of justice upheld. Troy Williams carries himself with the quiet dignity of a man who has earned his place in the world through decades of service and sacrifice. For 30 years, he wore the uniform of the United States Navy, rising from a young ensign fresh out of the Naval Academy to the rank of Rear Admiral. His journey took him from the flight decks of aircraft carriers to the Pentagon's corridors of power, where he oversaw 3 major naval air stations and commanded over 50,000 personnel across multiple installations. The transition from military service to civilian success came naturally to Troy. His deep understanding of aviation logistics and personnel management became the foundation for Williams Aerospace Technologies, a company he built from nothing into a $2 billion empire. The corporation specializes in advanced flight management systems and pilot training programs, serving major airlines across North America and Europe. Under his leadership, the company has revolutionized safety protocols and efficiency standards throughout the industry. But Troy's proudest connection to aviation reaches back generations. His grandfather, Lieutenant Colonel Robert Williams, was among the legendary Tuskegee Airmen during World War II, those brave black pilots who proved their worth in the skies over Europe when the world said they couldn't fly. The legacy of courage and excellence runs deep in the Williams family bloodline, a heritage that shaped Troy's understanding of both leadership and justice. Today, Troy travels in comfortable anonymity, his casual attire chosen for the long flight ahead. The polo shirt and khakis represent his preference for understated elegance over flashy displays of wealth. His reading material, a mix of financial reports and industry publications, hints at his professional interests. But nothing about his appearance screams power or influence. Forward in the cockpit, Captain Derek Stone completes his pre-flight preparations with mechanical precision. 15 years of commercial flying have honed his technical skills to perfection, but they've also calcified certain attitudes that he keeps carefully hidden beneath his professional exterior. Stone prides himself on running a tight ship, maintaining what he calls appropriate standards in his domain. Through the cockpit security monitor, Stone observes the business-class cabin with particular attention. His eyes linger on Troy, and a familiar discomfort settles in his chest. The sight of yet another black passenger in business class triggers thoughts he would never voice aloud, but can't seem to suppress. In Stone's narrow worldview, certain people belong in certain places, and exceptions to this unspoken rule always leave him feeling unsettled. Interesting crowd today, Stone mutters to his first officer, his tone carrying implications that don't require elaboration. The younger pilot, focused on his checklist, merely nods without looking up. Stone's gaze returns to the monitor, watching as Troy calmly reviews what appears to be a quarterly earnings report. The sight of obvious intelligence and professional competence somehow makes Stone's discomfort worse rather than better. The captain's prejudices simmer beneath his professional veneer, waiting for the right moment to surface. He tells himself he's simply maintaining standards, ensuring that passengers understand the privilege of flying in premium cabins. But deep down, Stone's motivations stem from assumptions and biases that would shame him if he examined them honestly. As the aircraft prepares for departure, both men remain unaware of the collision course that fate has set in motion. Troy Williams, the soft-spoken gentleman in casual clothes, and Captain Derek Stone, the pilot with hidden prejudices, are about to engage in a confrontation that will change both their lives forever. The smooth routine of departure preparations hits its first snag when air traffic control announces a 20-minute delay due to severe weather patterns moving through the northeastern corridor. The news ripples through the cabin with the usual mixture of resigned sighs and frustrated murmurs that accompany any disruption to travel plans. Troy accepts the delay with characteristic patience, using the time to make a quick phone call to his assistant. His voice remains low and professional as he discusses rescheduling his afternoon appointments. "Please move the board meeting to 3:30, he says quietly. "I should still make it in time, weather permitting." The conversation lasts less than 2 minutes, but its significance will become clear much later. In the cockpit, Captain Stone monitors the delay announcement with growing irritation. Weather delays always put him on edge, disrupting his carefully planned schedule and creating opportunities for passenger complaints. His eyes drift to the cabin monitor once again, and his focus settles on Troy with particular intensity. Something about the man's calm demeanor in business class continues to gnaw at him, feeding prejudices that Stone struggles to rationalize even to himself. "I should check on the passengers," Stone announces to his first officer, though cabin management typically falls to the flight attendants. His decision appears routine, even commendable, but the way his gaze lingers on Troy suggests other motivations. Stone unbuckles his harness and steps into the main cabin with the measured authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. The captain's presence immediately draws attention from passengers and crew alike. His uniform commands respect, and his purposeful stride suggests official business. But instead of addressing the delay with general announcements or reassurances, Stone's path leads him directly to row 2, where Troy sits absorbed in his reading. "Excuse me, sir," Stone says, his voice carrying just enough volume to attract nearby passengers' attention. There seems to be some confusion about seating arrangements. The words hang in the air with a manufactured authority designed to put Troy on the defensive from the very first exchange. Troy looks up from his Wall Street Journal with mild surprise, his expression remaining polite despite the unexpected interruption. "I'm sorry, Captain, but I'm not sure I understand. I'm sitting in my assigned seat. 2A. His response carries the measured tone of someone accustomed to handling challenges diplomatically, but there's an unmistakable strength beneath the courtesy. Stone's request to see Troy's boarding pass carries undertones that go far beyond standard procedure. The captain examines the document with exaggerated scrutiny, turning it over multiple times as if searching for signs of forgery or fraud. His performance draws increasingly uncomfortable stares from other business-class passengers, who begin to sense something inappropriate about the interaction. "This is business-class seating," Stone states with obvious emphasis, as if Troy might be unaware of his surroundings. "Are you absolutely certain this is your correct seat assignment?" The question drips with condescension, masked as helpful concern, a tone that makes several nearby passengers shift uncomfortably in their seats. Troy's response remains controlled, but his voice takes on a slightly harder edge. "Captain, I'm quite confident about my seat assignment. Is there some specific problem you need to address?" The subtle challenge in his words suggests that Troy recognizes the true nature of this confrontation, even as he maintains his diplomatic composure. The tension in the immediate area becomes palpable as other passengers begin to realize they're witnessing something more than a routine seating issue. A few people discreetly pull out their phones, sensing that this exchange might be worth documenting. The business-class cabin, normally a haven of quiet comfort, transforms into an arena where unspoken prejudices are about to collide with quiet dignity. Stone feels the power dynamic he's trying to establish, feeding off what he perceives as Troy's need to explain and justify his presence. In the captain's mind, he's simply maintaining proper order and standards, but his selective attention, ignoring a casually dressed white passenger 2 rows away while scrutinizing Troy with such intensity, reveals the true motivation behind his actions. Among the flight attendants observing this exchange, Sarah Chen watches with growing concern and professional alarm. As a senior crew member, she recognizes behavior that violates both company policy and basic human decency. What Captain Stone doesn't know is that Sarah Chen holds a position far more significant than her current role suggests, and she's taking careful mental notes of everything she witnesses. The confrontation escalates slowly but inevitably, like storm clouds gathering on a clear horizon. Troy Williams, with 3 decades of military experience and leadership, recognizes the challenge being presented to him. Captain Derek Stone, driven by prejudices he won't acknowledge, continues down a path that will soon prove catastrophic to his career and reputation. Captain Stone's initial challenge evolves into something far more sinister as he decides to make his point publicly. His voice rises just enough to ensure that most of the business-class cabin can hear his next words. "Sir, I'm going to need you to provide proof of purchase for this ticket," he announces with manufactured authority, treating Troy like a suspected criminal rather than a paying customer. The request sends ripples of shock through the nearby passengers. Demanding proof of purchase from a seated passenger represents a clear violation of standard airline protocol, and everyone within earshot recognizes the inappropriate nature of the demand. Yet Stone continues, emboldened by his uniform and position of authority. "We have very strict policies about appropriate attire in business class." Stone continues, his eyes deliberately scanning Troy's casual polo shirt and khaki pants. This seems quite informal for this section of the aircraft. The criticism cuts deeper because of its public nature, designed to embarrass and humiliate rather than address any legitimate concern. Troy's response reveals the steel beneath his diplomatic exterior. "Captain, I believe you're significantly overstepping your authority here," he says, his voice carrying the unmistakable tone of someone accustomed to command. The words are measured and controlled, but they carry an authority that causes Stone to hesitate momentarily. Recognizing that the situation has moved beyond normal bounds, Troy reaches for his phone. "Perhaps I should contact someone I know at this airline to clarify the situation," he suggests, his tone remaining professional despite the obvious provocation. The threat is subtle but real, suggesting connections that could cause problems for an overzealous captain. Stone's response reveals both his arrogance and his fundamental misunderstanding of the situation. "No phone calls during preparation time," he snaps, using regulations as a weapon to maintain control. "Sir, if you cannot provide adequate documentation proving your right to this seat, I'll have to ask you to relocate to economy class where your attire might be more appropriate." The public humiliation intensifies as Stone's voice carries throughout the business-class cabin. Every passenger now understands they're witnessing blatant discrimination, and the uncomfortable silence speaks volumes about the shocking nature of the captain's behavior. Several people begin recording with their phones, sensing that this moment needs to be preserved as evidence. The discriminatory nature of Stone's actions becomes even more apparent when a white passenger in athletic wear, shorts, sneakers, and a rumpled t-shirt, passes by without drawing even a glance from the captain. The contrast couldn't be more obvious or damning, and Troy notes the selective enforcement with grim understanding. "Interesting," Troy murmurs, his eyes taking in the airline logo on his boarding pass with what appears to be recognition rather than confusion. "Very interesting indeed." He looks directly at Captain Stone with an expression that might be described as calculating, as if he's solving a complex puzzle that's suddenly become clear. Stone misinterprets Troy's measured response as intimidation or threat. "Are you threatening me, sir?" he demands, his voice rising with indignation. "Because I can have security remove you from this aircraft immediately." The escalation reveals Stone's willingness to use any available tool to maintain his perceived authority. What Captain Stone doesn't realize is that Troy Williams has shifted from victim to strategist. With 3 decades of military leadership experience, Troy recognizes when an opponent is overextending themselves, creating opportunities for a devastating counterattack. His decision to endure the humiliation rather than immediately assert his true identity reflects strategic thinking rather than weakness. Troy's phone buzzes with an incoming text, and despite Stone's earlier prohibition, he glances at the screen. The message appears to confirm something important, because his slight smile suggests satisfaction rather than concern. "Captain Stone," he says quietly, reading the name from the pilot's identification badge. "Are you absolutely certain you want to continue down this path?" The question hangs in the air with ominous undertones that Stone completely misses. In his arrogance and prejudice, the captain interprets Troy's warning as desperate bluffing rather than the calm confidence of someone who holds significantly more power than appearances suggest. Flight attendant Sarah Chen has been documenting every word and action, her professional training warring with her growing outrage at the discriminatory treatment she's witnessing. Her notes will prove crucial in the events about to unfold, though Captain Stone remains blissfully unaware of her true significance in the company hierarchy. The stage is set for a dramatic reversal of fortune, but Stone's prejudices blind him to the approaching storm. His public humiliation of Troy Williams is about to backfire in ways that will end his career and serve as a cautionary tale about the dangerous consequences of discrimination. Captain Stone's confidence reaches dangerous levels as he decides to escalate the confrontation beyond mere verbal harassment. The delay provides him with additional time to make his point, and he chooses to use that time in the most destructive way possible. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announces to the entire business class cabin, "we're experiencing a minor delay due to a seating verification issue that needs immediate resolution." The public announcement transforms a personal confrontation into a spectacle, ensuring that every passenger understands they're witnessing something extraordinary. Stone's decision to involve airport security represents a dramatic escalation that crosses every line of professional conduct and human decency. "I need security personnel to gate A12 immediately." Stone radios to ground control, his voice carrying the authority of someone reporting a genuine threat. "We have a passenger situation that requires immediate intervention." The request sends shockwaves through the cabin as passengers realize the captain is treating Troy like a dangerous criminal rather than a paying customer. Troy Williams, drawing upon 30 years of military leadership experience, makes a strategic decision that demonstrates both wisdom and restraint. Rather than escalate the confrontation through immediate assertion of his authority, he chooses to allow Captain Stone to dig his own grave deeper with each passing moment. "Captain, I don't want to cause any delays for these other passengers," Troy says with dignified resignation, beginning to gather his belongings as if preparing to comply with the outrageous demand. His apparent submission feeds Stone's sense of victory, though several nearby passengers recognize the quiet strength in Troy's controlled response. As Troy stands to relocate his items, he makes a phone call that will prove pivotal to the unfolding drama. "James," he says quietly into his device, "I need you at JFK immediately upon our arrival. We have a situation that requires your personal attention." The conversation is brief, but loaded with implications that Captain Stone completely fails to grasp. Stone's behavior becomes increasingly erratic as he senses what he believes is total victory over the passenger who dared to challenge his authority. "This is exactly how we handle disruptions professionally," he tells the flight attendants with smug satisfaction. "Sometimes you need to establish clear boundaries and maintain proper standards." The captain's comments to his crew reveal the depth of his prejudiced thinking. "Some people need to understand their appropriate place," he confides to his first officer, unaware that his words are being overheard and recorded by multiple passengers. The statement exposes the racist ideology driving his actions, removing any doubt about his motivations. Emboldened by his perceived success, Stone decides to extend his authority demonstration to other passengers. His eyes scan the cabin, searching for additional targets to reinforce his message about maintaining standards. The power trip has consumed his judgment completely, transforming him from a professional pilot into something far more dangerous. Several passengers begin voicing their objections to the discriminatory treatment they're witnessing. "This is clearly racial profiling," declares a woman in seat 4B, her voice carrying moral outrage that resonates throughout the cabin. "I'm recording this entire incident for social media and the authorities," adds another passenger, ensuring that Stone's actions will have consequences far beyond this single flight. Stone's response to passenger protests reveals his complete loss of professional control. "Anyone interfering with crew duties will be removed from this aircraft," he threatens, attempting to silence opposition through intimidation. His demand to confiscate recording devices represents yet another violation of passenger rights and company policy. During this chaos, Troy continues his quiet observations and preparations. He photographs the aircraft's tail number and interior features, documenting evidence with the systematic thoroughness of someone building a legal case. His text messages suggest coordination with powerful allies, though Captain Stone remains oblivious to the significance of these communications. "Prepare emergency board meeting regarding Flight 447. Troy types into his phone. "Need complete personnel file on Captain Derek Stone within 1 hour. The messages hint at connections and authority that completely contradict Stone's assumptions about the troublesome passenger he's trying to remove. Sarah Chen, the flight attendant who has been documenting everything, approaches Troy with apparent sympathy. "Sir, I want you to know that this treatment is completely unacceptable and against all company policies," she says quietly. "Would you be willing to serve as a witness to what you've observed?" Troy asks, not realizing he's speaking to someone with far more authority than her current role suggests. The tension reaches a breaking point when Stone makes his most dramatic threat yet. "This aircraft will not depart until this passenger situation is completely resolved to my satisfaction," he announces. "I'm prepared to delay this flight indefinitely, if necessary." The ultimatum forces every passenger to choose sides in a confrontation that has spiraled completely out of control. Troy Williams, the man who once commanded naval fleets and now oversees a multi-billion-dollar corporation, watches Captain Stone's self-destruction with the patience of someone who has learned that the best victories come to those who allow their enemies to defeat themselves. The storm is about to break, and Stone has no idea that he's standing directly in its path. The captain's radio crackles with an incoming message from ground control. "Captain Stone, we're sending up James Mitchell, the airline's operations director, to assist with your passenger situation." Stone's face lights up with satisfaction, believing that reinforcements are arriving to support his position. He has no way of knowing that he's just summoned the instrument of his own professional destruction. The confident smile on Captain Stone's face grows wider as he watches James Mitchell hurrying up the jet bridge toward the aircraft. Mitchell's rapid response confirms Stone's belief that the airline takes passenger disruption seriously, and he prepares to present his case with the satisfaction of someone who believes himself vindicated by company support. "James, thank you for responding so quickly," Stone says, as the operations director enters the business class cabin, slightly out of breath from his urgent journey from the terminal. "I have a difficult passenger situation that requires your immediate backing. We need to establish clear authority here." James Mitchell's purposeful stride comes to an abrupt halt the moment his eyes fall upon Troy Williams. The color drains from Mitchell's face as recognition hits him like a physical blow, and his confident demeanor crumbles into something approaching panic. The transformation is so dramatic that nearby passengers immediately sense something significant has shifted. Mr. Williams?" Mitchell stammers, his voice barely above a whisper. "Sir, what are you doing here? I wasn't expecting." His words trail off as the full implications of the situation begin to dawn on him. The man Captain Stone has been publicly humiliating and threatening to remove from the aircraft is not just any passenger. Troy Williams rises from his seat with the quiet dignity that has defined him throughout this ordeal, but now his demeanor carries an unmistakable authority that transforms the entire atmosphere of the cabin. "Hello, James," he says with calm professionalism. "I've been experiencing firsthand the customer service standards of our airline. It's been quite educational." Captain Stone's confusion is evident as he looks between the two men, trying to understand the connection he's witnessing. "Wait a minute," he says, his voice betraying the first hints of uncertainty. "You two know each other? How is that possible?" The confident authority that has driven his behavior begins to crack as he senses something fundamentally wrong with his assumptions. James Mitchell's response hits the cabin like a thunderbolt. "Derek, this is Troy Williams," he says, his voice shaking with barely controlled panic. "He's the chairman of our board of directors. He owns 40% of this airline." The revelation reverberates through the business class cabin as passengers and crew alike realize they've been witnessing something extraordinary. The impact on Captain Stone is immediate and devastating. That's impossible," he stutters, his face cycling through disbelief, confusion, and growing horror. "He's just... look at him." Stone's worldview crumbles as he realizes that his assumptions about power, success, and social position have led him into an unrecoverable mistake. "He's our boss, Derek," Mitchell continues, his words serving as nails in the coffin of Stone's career. "He's not just any board member, he's the single largest individual shareholder and the driving force behind our company's strategic direction." The explanation strips away any remaining doubt about the magnitude of Stone's error. Sarah Chen, who has been observing and documenting everything, steps forward with her own revelation. "Mr. Williams, I'm Sarah Chen, fellow board member and former chief operations officer," she says, removing any pretense about her role as a flight attendant. "I've witnessed every moment of this discriminatory treatment, and I can provide detailed testimony about Captain Stone's violations of company policy and federal regulations. The convergence of power around Troy Williams creates a moment of absolute clarity for everyone in the cabin. Captain Stone, who believed he was exercising authority over a passenger he deemed inappropriate for business class, has instead been systematically destroying his career in front of the most powerful people in the airline industry. Troy Williams steps fully into his role as corporate leader, his voice carrying the unmistakable tone of ultimate authority. Captain Stone, in the past 45 minutes, you have violated 12 separate company policies, 3 federal regulations, and numerous basic principles of human decency. His words are measured and precise, delivered with the gravity of someone pronouncing sentence. Let me be absolutely clear about what you've done, Troy continues, his voice carrying throughout the cabin. You engaged in racial profiling, harassment of passengers, abuse of authority, creation of a hostile environment, and deliberate humiliation based on racial prejudice. These actions are not just morally reprehensible. They represent grounds for immediate termination and potential legal action. The historical context that Troy provides next transforms his personal humiliation into something far more significant. My grandfather, Lieutenant Colonel Robert Williams, was one of the Tuskegee Airmen during World War II. He says, his voice carrying both pride and pain. He fought for the right to serve his country when people said black men couldn't be trusted to fly military aircraft. After the war, he helped establish this airline on the principle that aviation should be open to everyone, regardless of race or background. Troy continues, the company you work for was built on values of equality, opportunity, and respect for human dignity. Today, Captain Stone, you have betrayed every single one of those founding principles. The weight of history and corporate authority converges in this moment as Troy Williams, descendant of aviation pioneers and current leader of a major airline, confronts the embodiment of the prejudices his family has fought against for generations. Captain Stone's actions have not just violated company policy, they've attacked the very foundation upon which the airline was built. James Mitchell, desperate to contain the damage and salvage his own position, attempts to distance himself and the company from Stone's behavior. Mr. Williams, I want to assure you that Captain Stone's actions do not reflect our corporate values or training standards. He says, this is completely unacceptable and will be addressed immediately. But Troy Williams has moved beyond damage control into a mode of systematic correction that will ensure such incidents never happen again. James, we're not just dealing with one rogue employee, he says with the strategic thinking that has made him successful in both military and business contexts. We're addressing systemic failures that allowed this situation to develop in the first place. Captain Stone, finally understanding the full scope of his mistake, attempts desperate damage control. Mr. Williams, I didn't know who you were. I was just trying to maintain standards. I never meant any disrespect. His plea reveals the shallow nature of his regret, apologizing not for his actions, but for choosing the wrong target. That's exactly the problem, Captain, Troy responds with cold precision. Your behavior should be unacceptable, regardless of who your target is. The fact that you're only sorry because of my position proves that you've learned nothing from this experience. Troy Williams' transformation from patient victim to corporate authority reaches its culmination as he delivers the consequences that Captain Stone's behavior has earned. Captain Derek Stone, you are hereby terminated from employment with this airline, effective immediately. he announces with the finality of someone accustomed to making decisions that cannot be appealed or reversed. Your flight certification will be suspended pending a full investigation by the Federal Aviation Administration. Troy continues, each word falling like a hammer blow against Stone's crumbling career. The documented evidence of discrimination and passenger harassment will be forwarded to all relevant regulatory authorities, and your personnel file will reflect the circumstances of your dismissal. Stone's desperate attempt to salvage his situation reveals the depth of his panic and the shallowness of his character. "You can't do this to me!" he shouts, his professional composure completely shattered. "I have a family, a mortgage, responsibilities. I was just doing my job, following company protocols." His protests ring hollow in the face of overwhelming evidence to the contrary. Troy's response carries the weight of moral authority and personal experience. "Captain Stone, did you consider my family when you chose to humiliate me in front of 200 passengers?" he asks with devastating calm. "Did you think about the impact on my dignity, my reputation, or the message you were sending to every person of color on this aircraft? Our company has a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination, which you acknowledged during your annual training just 6 months ago." Troy continues, consulting information that James Mitchell has hastily pulled up on his tablet. "You signed documents confirming your understanding of these policies, yet you chose to ignore them when it suited your personal prejudices." Sarah Chen steps forward with her own contribution to Stone's downfall. "I have audio recordings of your entire interaction with Mr. Williams, including your comments to crew members about passengers needing to know their place." She reveals, "These recordings will be preserved as evidence and shared with federal investigators examining patterns of discrimination in the airline industry." The comprehensive nature of the evidence against Stone becomes clear as multiple passengers volunteer their own documentation. "I live-streamed the entire incident on social media," announces one passenger. "It already has over 50,000 views and is being shared by civil rights organizations." Another adds, "I sent the video directly to the NAACP and the Department of Transportation." James Mitchell, recognizing the corporate crisis unfolding around him, attempts to demonstrate decisive leadership. "Mr. Williams, I'm implementing immediate company-wide mandatory diversity training for all personnel," he announces. "We'll also be conducting an independent audit of our hiring, training, and disciplinary procedures to prevent future incidents." Stone's final desperate attempt to shift blame reveals his complete failure to accept responsibility for his actions. "I was just following standard security protocols," he insists. "Passengers in business class should meet certain appearance standards." His continued focus on Troy's casual attire proves that he still doesn't understand the fundamental nature of his transgression. "There are no appearance standards for business class passengers beyond basic decency," Troy responds with the patience of someone explaining simple concepts to a child. "Your selective enforcement based on race, not attire, is what makes your actions discriminatory and illegal." The moment of Stone's physical removal from the aircraft provides the visual conclusion that passengers have been anticipating. Airport security personnel, summoned by James Mitchell rather than Stone, escort the former captain off the plane as passengers openly applaud. The irony is complete. The security Stone called to remove Troy instead removes Stone himself. "Ladies and gentlemen," Troy addresses the cabin as Stone disappears up the jet bridge. "I apologize for the delay and disruption you've experienced today. As chairman of this airline, I want to assure you that discrimination has no place in our company or industry." His words carry both authority and genuine remorse for the passengers' inconvenience. The immediate aftermath brings swift justice in multiple forms. Troy announces that every passenger who witnessed the incident will receive complimentary upgrades on future flights, along with vouchers for full refunds of their current tickets. The gesture transforms victims and witnesses into beneficiaries, creating positive associations from a negative experience. James Mitchell's public apology to Troy, delivered in front of all passengers and crew, serves as both personal contrition and corporate policy statement. On behalf of our entire airline, I sincerely apologize for the completely unacceptable treatment you received today, he says. This incident contradicts everything our company stands for, and we are committed to ensuring it never happens again. Troy's gracious acceptance of the apology demonstrates the leadership qualities that have made him successful in both military and civilian contexts. James, every crisis presents an opportunity for improvement. He responds, today's incident will help us build a stronger, more inclusive organization that truly serves all passengers with dignity and respect. The flight finally prepares for departure, with Troy Williams settled comfortably in his original seat, surrounded by passengers who now understand they've witnessed something historic. The casual polo shirt and khaki pants that sparked Stone's discriminatory behavior remain unchanged, but their meaning has been transformed completely. Captain Stone's replacement, a professional pilot who treats all passengers with equal courtesy, regardless of their appearance or race, completes the pre-flight preparations with appropriate respect for everyone aboard. The contrast with Stone's behavior could not be more stark or instructive. As the aircraft finally pushes back from the gate, Troy Williams reflects on the morning's events with the satisfaction of someone who has turned personal injustice into systemic change. The humiliation he endured will prevent countless others from experiencing similar discrimination, transforming his suffering into meaningful progress. 6 months after the incident that ended Derek Stone's aviation career, the transformative impact of that confrontation continues to ripple through the airline industry and beyond. Troy Williams's airline has become the gold standard for diversity and inclusion practices, with other carriers studying and implementing their comprehensive reform programs. The Tuskegee Legacy Scholarship Program, established in honor of Troy's grandfather and the other pioneering black aviators, has already provided full flight training to 25 minority pilots who might otherwise have been unable to pursue aviation careers. The program's success has inspired similar initiatives throughout the industry, creating pathways for underrepresented communities to enter cockpits across America. Troy Williams himself has been recognized with numerous awards for his leadership in promoting equality and dignity in corporate America. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People presented him with their Corporate Leadership Award, while the Department of Transportation cited his company as a model for inclusive practices in transportation industries. The airline's newest aircraft, a state-of-the-art Boeing 787, bears the name Lieutenant Colonel Robert Williams in honor of Troy's grandfather and all the Tuskegee airmen who broke barriers in military aviation. The dedication ceremony, attended by surviving Tuskegee airmen and their families, celebrated both historical courage and contemporary progress. Derek Stone's story serves as a cautionary tale throughout the aviation industry, featured in mandatory training programs that help employees recognize and combat unconscious bias. His fall from respected captain to unemployed pariah demonstrates the swift and severe consequences that await those who allow prejudice to override professionalism and human decency. The video footage of Stone's discriminatory behavior has been viewed millions of times across social media platforms, becoming a viral symbol of how not to treat customers or fellow human beings. Corporate training departments use the incident as a case study in crisis management, discrimination prevention, and the importance of treating all individuals with respect, regardless of their appearance or perceived status. James Mitchell's leadership during the crisis helped him retain his position and earn Troy's respect for his swift, decisive response to the discrimination. His implementation of comprehensive reform measures has made the airline a leader in inclusive practices, proving that organizations can emerge stronger from periods of crisis and self-examination. Sarah Chen's documentation of the incident proved crucial, not only for holding Derek Stone accountable, but also for establishing clear protocols for reporting and addressing discrimination in the workplace. Her dual role as board member and witness provided unique insights that shaped the company's enhanced training and oversight procedures. The Troy Williams Foundation, established with proceeds from the discrimination lawsuit settlement, provides legal support for individuals facing workplace discrimination and funds research into bias prevention in corporate environments. The Foundation's work extends far beyond aviation, supporting equality efforts across multiple industries and communities. Troy often visits the cockpit of the Lieutenant Colonel Robert Williams aircraft, where he keeps a framed photograph of his grandfather in his Tuskegee Airmen uniform. The image serves as a daily reminder of how far the family has come and the responsibility that comes with breaking barriers for future generations. The casual polo shirt and khaki pants that triggered Derek Stone's discriminatory behavior have been preserved in Troy's office, displayed alongside his grandfather's military decorations and his own corporate awards. The simple clothing serves as a powerful reminder that worth and dignity cannot be measured by appearance or assumptions. Today, Troy Williams continues leading his airline with the same principles that guided him through that difficult morning on Flight 447, treating every individual with respect, standing up against injustice, and using positions of power to create positive change for others who might not have the same resources or support. You don't need to be a CEO or board chairman to make a difference when you witness injustice. Every time you see someone being treated unfairly because of their race, gender, age, or appearance, you have a choice: remain silent and complicit, or speak up and become part of the solution. Troy Williams didn't set out to become a symbol of justice that morning. He simply refused to accept discrimination quietly. His grandfather fought for the right to serve his country when others said black men couldn't fly. Troy fought for the right to be treated with dignity when others said he didn't belong in business class. The power to create change exists in your pocket every time you witness discrimination. Record it, report it, and refuse to let it slide by unnoticed. Support businesses that demonstrate inclusive values through their actions, not just their advertising slogans. Educate yourself about unconscious bias and challenge your own assumptions about who belongs where and why. Be the Troy Williams in someone else's story. Stand up for the person being treated unfairly, even when it's uncomfortable or inconvenient. Every small act of courage contributes to a larger movement toward equality and human dignity. Derek Stone thought he knew who belonged in business class based on clothing and skin color. His assumptions cost him everything. Don't let prejudice and bias rob you of your humanity, your career, or your soul. Today you have a choice. Will you be the person who stands up for what's right, or will you be the bystander who lets injustice continue? Choose courage over comfort. Choose justice over silence. Choose to be part of the solution. Justice doesn't arrive by accident. It needs people like you to deliver it. Make your choice. Make it count.